taxes are the only certainty. Well, 20% of people have society. And I have made it on my own in this world. Well, not to take care of time around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And well done, Justicios. It's so lovely to see you for this, the last show before the school break. And we take a break for the holidays and recharge those batteries, much needed, especially for my panel of wonderful people that I've got for you tonight. Sort of in the top left for me, anyway. Laura Lee Daly, hi there.
Hello.
I'm so glad that you got the real thing behind you. I hate it when people have the false ones where sort of every time they move, the head sort of grows and shrinks with as the technology tries to keep up with the movement. It's great to see you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, John.
And sort of and down on my bottom right, but sort of may not be yours. Sort of Jane Strange.
Hello.
It's great to see you, Jane. I know that you're so angry about the thing you're going to talk about tonight. So we're just anticipating a wonderful Jane Strange run. Don't let us down there. Not with any pressure. And sort of in my bottom left, but sort of maybe not yours, I have the boss of all, Paul Daly. Hi, Paul. Good to see you.
Hey, I've concluded this week I'm not a boss or a leader. So yeah. I'm okay with not being the boss or the leader. I'm just one of the normal folks, which is very suitable. Thank you. Not normal like the Labour right when they demanded they're normal, which it doesn't mean. I just mean don't think of me as above.
it's a bit like the life of Brian, isn't it? The true leader denies his leadership. So let's go to the start of the show.
I didn't have my jingle ready.
No.
I don't have my jingle ready.
It's got to his head.
Laura's done all the work tonight to make sure that everything's up and running. Apart from that, and I got lazy.
So it's my fault. Sorry.
No, I got lazy. It's entirely my fault. So, John, do you want to sing?
Okay. Moment of the week. Okay, now we're under strict instructions for this. I can only accept one short statement, and then I'm going to go to Paul. Paul, what's your moment of the week?
So my moment of the week is a friend of the show and general all-around good guy, member of the Labour NEC, Mish Rahman, being blocked from standing in his own seat for the Labour Party. They will not select him. He's not a suitable candidate because he voted against Keir Starmer as a member of the NEC. He voted against his wishes. So for exercising his democratic right and voting in a certain way, he has been blocked from the selection process. And I know that they had to rerun that selection process a number of times because a number of times he was the only candidate. He's a graduate of the Bernie Grant leadership what's it called? The leadership program. The Bernie Grant leadership program, which encourages black people to get involved in politics. Not one of the graduates from that has made a Labour shortlist since Keir Starmer.
Thank you. And also he was supported by 7 unions, meant nothing. Factionalism running wild. I'm going to Jane. What's your moment of your week?
It's the Labour leader's U-turn on his former pledge to end the 2-child support cap. So I'm making a conscious decision, as much as I can, not to use the word benefits, because I think this is something really damaging in our society, the use of the benefit. But this has been called out by the Green Party. There are alternatives out there. There are serious options out there who are saying this is wrong. So just want to point that out too.
Very much indeed. People going mad about this, an awful lot of downright mutiny about it, and not just in the countryside among the membership, sort of with the PLP and many people like Andy Burnham and people like that. And Laura Lee, what's your moment of your week?
Mine has to be North of Tyne Mayor, who is currently in post, has resigned from the Labour Party following the Labour Party keeping him away from any selection process to go for the job he currently holds. Not only that, he's decided that he will continue his campaign. He's going to stand as an independent because a lot of people there support him. And so he's doing a fundraiser, and he's like, his goal was to get like £25,000 by the end of the month, and it's only been open 2 days, not even that, and he's got well over £90,000, and the donations are like not big donations from big donors either. It's just a proper grassroots movement. So I am all about that at the minute. I'm loving it.
The current total on Jamie Driscoll for North East Mayor on the GoFundMe is £91,097. It's going up all the time. If you haven't donated, I've tried can someone put the link onto the chat so people can see it? But if you're a member of the Labour Party, donate anonymously, because there are people going through looking for Labour Party members' names, and it is a prima facie reason to be expelled. That's campaigning for a direct opponent of the Labour candidate. So just be careful if you do that, you do so anonymously. And that in itself, there might be an issue which we want to pick up and talk about. Now, when we were all sharing what might be good moments of the week, Paul said, do you realise there's a thread running through all of these? And I'm going to go back to Paul and Paul, what is the thread running through all of these?
Okay, so now I do have the jingle ready, so we might as well do the jingle, and then I'll tell you what everyone's moment of the week is. The moment of the week is that the Labour Party is full of big old ghouls who are absolutely horrible, a right-wing faction that is completely in control of the Labour Party, do not care one single bit about democracy, do not trust its members enough with decisions around who they can elect into positions of authority, and everyone who does not toe the party line, which is now right-wing, and to the right of the Conservatives in many, many cases, will not be tolerated within the party and will not have a voice. That is our moment of the week.
Awesome.
If you didn't believe in the factionalism of Starmerism, it's absolutely been laid bare
Yeah.
this week.
He's not even trying to hide it though.
No. In fact, they're boasting about it.
Yeah.
They're daring people. They believe that if they drive out and they move away from the hard left to the soft left. I mean, people resigning all over the place, just getting rid of them because they and of course the other thing is that they've instructed canvassers in Uxbridge and Ruislip that they have to show respect to Tory voters and respect to their views. They mustn't disagree with them. Crazy.
Blimey, Governor! Wouldn't want to upset the old Tories now, would we?
You just see them on the doors going, yes, I'm sure Rwanda is a lovely travel destination.
Well, that brings me to my moment of the week, because I've been keeping quiet about my moment of the week, which didn't fit in with everybody else's moment of the week. But my moment of the week is that god-awful picture of the barge arriving in Dover, the prison hulk that they're going to plant there to imprison asylum seekers. They say we've got to be proud in Britain. I've never been ashamed as I am in that photograph of being British. We've gone back to Dickensian Victorian Britain. It's an absolute abomination. And I suppose the only good thing that can be said of Starmer's Labour Party is that the Tories are even worse. God.
But they're not, though, I don't think. They're the same. Like, Keir Starmer wants to be a Tory. He's just got a different coloured tie. And that's all anyone can come up with. And there was that awful article from, what do you call her, man? She's Polly Toynbee. She put an article out saying, let Labour get in and then judge them on the record. They're already telling you what they're going to do. And it's not very good. It's no better than the Tories. It's worse than the Tories in some respects. There were some people who were Tories who were dead against this two child cap, but the Labour front bench aren't against that, and Labour MPs who were speaking out against that are being silenced. They're being told where to go, and anyone on the front bench who disagreed with it were told you don't have to be on the front bench. You can go somewhere else. You can be against. And all of them had put out tweets in the past. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them had put out tweets in the past saying about how inhumane the policy was. But now they're saying there's no money, and that's economically illiterate as well. So, in a way, because they won't, at least the Tories are loyal to their own, and their own are the rich. And they will show unquestioning loyalty to those people and unquestioning subservience. And they will work in the interests of the rich. And they will make sure that no matter what mess they'll make of the country, the rich people will be okay. Yeah. Do Labour do that for the people who they claim to be in favour of, which is supposedly Labour, the workforce? Not in the slightest. They are not close to that. So in that respect, the Labour Party, by having been as loyal to the rich as the Tories are traitors to the very people who they owe their votes to.
The thing that upsets me about the Polly Toynbee argument, which she says, let's get elected and then we can dump all these things we've been saying to get the Tories to vote for us and be more radical is one. I don't believe a word of it. I suspect that you'll find they're much less radical than they're even saying when they actually get there. But the second thing is that even if they were to do that, what you're doing is you're asking me to support a party which is lying to people, to electors, to get into power.
Mhm.
And so I don't want to support that party either. I want a party of principle, and sort of if they're not electable, well, give the electorate what they deserve then.
Mm.
But for Christ's sake, let's offer them a party which is a decent party of decency and honesty and principle and good intentions, and then get elected on that or not. That's what democracy is. I can't stand all this at the moment. Laura, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, if you do want to feel a little bit better about the UK and the people of the UK, then there are immigration ships being turned away from ports in places like Liverpool. They're not letting them dock at all because they don't want to have people shipped out of the country. So there is some solidarity. There are good people. The UK still has a good backbone. It's just a shame that we're not seeing it every day. Like, we're seeing the horribleness of that barge is just, it's depressingly grotesque, isn't it? What world are we living in? I do feel like we're in, I've said this before, I do feel like we're living in the Matrix, or somebody's movie, like a hybrid of like 1984 in the Hunger Games, or I don't know. It's not very pleasant, but there are good people. There are people saying, no, you're not bringing your ship here.
And at least the Labour Party have given us a load of really funny memes. Like, if we want a positive thing about the Labour Party, those ones of like Keir Starmer hiding behind a door saying, "You're not a third child, are you? You don't want to eat," and him being called Kid Starver as well. Like, imagine that. You got like the Margaret Thatcher, the milk snatcher, and Kid Starver. Imagine a Labour leader that has that nickname. Unbelievable. This is
I
where
was
we
just
are.
about to say, fancy your legacy for the historians being, I got through the illegal immigration bill. But it's just as bad as and I had the nickname Kid Starver.
Excellent.
Before we go, Jane, have you got anything you want to say?
I'll just go back to Jamie Driscoll. I've felt so low since 2019, and it just felt like there was no hope. And then yesterday, within a few seconds, that turned around, and it really shocked me how fast that turned around and how I actually felt hope and that something positive can happen. So I think we need to remember that. It feels sometimes like it's going to take another 20 years before anything will ever feel hopeful again, but just a few seconds can turn things around.
I mean, one of the things I've said is that there's a huge weight of people out there who've either left the Labour Party, who are on the verge of leaving the Labour Party, and what they need is a realistic alternative party to go and join. And so it needs somebody with authority and status to kick that off. Now, Jamie Driscoll is not forming a party, but you're absolutely right. He's ploughing off down a road which might be an interesting alternative, that we have socialist independence standing here, there and everywhere, and sort of seeing if they get support there. I just checked the current figure on Jamie Driscoll for North East Mayor is 91,187. It's going up all the time. I don't think it'll reach 100,000 pounds by the time we go off air.
At the end of the show, unless we do something. Unless we do something.
Email all your friends.
There's a point that's like, it's come up in the chat, sort of like, Maria Nelson was saying she warned everyone about Starmer, and she said that she warned people what he was, and she was bullied. And I don't know who that was bullied by, but I think it's really important that we listen to people when they say things, because a lot of the time people are kind of like ridiculed about things that they say, and people don't listen to them and they turn out to be right, and then people kind of like dismiss that later on. Yeah, but you know, it is really, really important that we should listen to more people. You know, we should give them the opportunity to be heard.
It's sad the number of people who are having to say, I voted for him, I believed his lies. And those people who stood up and said, I don't believe a word of what he's saying, are proven to be correct. Okay, let's move on.
Now it's time for the big story.
Well, to be honest, it isn't, because we've agreed today that we're having 3 equal stories of about a quarter of an hour each, and so that we're just going to have a first one, a second one, and a third one. So the first one is to do with the public sector pay deal, and which was announced by Rishi Sunak with a great fanfare and a lot of stern force and warnings and statements about how this was it, and you didn't bother trying. Anyway, but I'll sort of, Paul, tell us all about it and all of it, and sort of then tell us your verdict. Tell us, but first of all, kick off by telling the listeners what it's all about. The public sector pay deal.
Okay, so going really far back in time, and I always think it's important to add the context to this. So if we go far enough back in time, I'm going to bring up a little graph for our viewers, and I'll describe it to everyone else. So what it is finance and business is the only sector to see a real terms wage increase since 2008. And what it is it's a graph sourced by the TUC analysis of ONS data. And basically, the graph shows that every sector, services, private sector, the whole economy, wholesale and retail, manufacturing, public sector, construction, and public sector excluding the financial services of the public sector, have all had real terms wage losses since 2008, and it's over 8% for the public sector and construction. But the finance and business sector has done very well for itself, so their real terms wage growth has been over 6%. Now, if we go back to 2008 and think about what that actually is and what happened in 2008, that was the world financial crisis. And anyone who's seen the film The Big Short will understand what triggered that. It was subprime mortgages that were bundled together with, so bad debt bundled in with good debt because people got really greedy. And the moral of the story is they knew that the public sector, or public money, would bail them out. They weren't even worried. They were like, we'll do all this stuff, and they got bailed. And they got bailed out, and then they started paying themselves bonuses again. And they're the only ones who are doing better now than they were in 2008. Everyone else is doing worse, and they're the ones who caused it. And our government chose to put billions and billions, hundreds of billions, into the financial sector to save it. If they'd have given that to individuals as people, if they'd just said, right, okay, we'll just have national banks, we could have all been richer. That money could have been in the economy, but instead, it's in rich people's bank accounts. And now we're being told in the public sector that it's our fault somehow. It's basically what it is. If you're poorer now, you must have done something wrong, yeah? So you must have been providing bad value, when you're looking after children. So I work in the public sector as a teacher. Do I provide bad value by looking after people's kids all day and trying to educate them? I don't think so. I think I provide quite good value. Do the NHS provide bad value? No, they save people's lives. They do incredible work. So no, or all sorts of other, like the firefighters and all sorts of other public sector workers are doing a good job and had nothing to do with the world financial crisis. And yet, we are still in an austerity situation following that. So 15 years of austerity because of the way they behaved. Now this week, Rishi Sunak has decided to reward the public sector with more than the Labour Party were willing to offer, by the way. They said in no way, shape or form would they be, because the independent review body recommends a certain figure for each sector. Teachers were recommended as 6.5%, and Rishi Sunak said, "Yeah, okay, you can have that, and we'll even fund part of it, but part of it has to be found out of existing budgets." Now, Gillian Keegan, the Secretary of State for Education, has said they can find it in the budgets on underspend in the sector. So they must have had a little nest egg somewhere, and they weren't spending all the money they said they were spending, because they said they can find that to pay teachers. Not necessarily support staff and all those who really need a pay rise as well, by the way, probably more so. But so they're going to do that now. That's way below inflation. Labour said they wouldn't even match the recommendation. So Labour will actually have tied themselves to a situation where they are to the right on workers' rights of the Tories, who are the most right-wing government we have had in my lifetime, and I lived through Thatcher. So we're in this absolutely appalling situation, this economic nonsense situation where everyone seems to think that the current inflation that we have is due to high wages, and yet we've had increasingly low wages for the past 15 years. Well, if something hasn't been happening, it certainly hasn't been causing inflation, hasn't it? Has it? Wage growth hasn't been causing inflation if there hasn't been any wage growth. Clearly something else is causing that. So the solution of every mainstream economist, which is very much the Labour Party, and mainstream is now actually would have been considered radically right-wing in the 70s and in the 60s and so on. It would have been considered actually appallingly right-wing. That's now mainstream. That is what's being followed, and we've ended up in a situation where everyone's saying, "Oh, there's no more money." Like, what you call it today? Lucy Powell was on the news saying, "Oh, there's no more money in our little kitty," like it's some sort of weird bank account or a piggy bank that you need to smash. Oh, there's no money left. The government prints money and decides how much money goes in different places. If we had to. If we had no deficit ever, there would be no money in the economy. That's how. So we've got this economic illiteracy that we always see. We've got people being blamed who were on low wages anyway, who've been punished for years and years, and the best we can do is a below inflation pay rise. It's not good enough as far as I'm concerned, but it looks like the unions are going to accept it because it is going to be the best that we're going to get.
Yeah, well, that's I need to come to Laura now, because that's exactly the question that I'm going to ask Laura. 6.5, it's nowhere near the 10% of inflation. I mean, how do you think the unions are going to react, and what will be the consequences if they do react the way you think?
Well, I think the unions so far have given really mixed responses. So the government have agreed between 5 and 7% for lots of different areas. So the doctors had asked for 35%. Obviously, they got nowhere near that. They got offered 6%, and their unions have said, falls absolutely short. It's an embarrassment. Definitely not. The teachers were looking for around 10. Obviously, they've been offered 6.5, and the current status is that all 4 teacher unions who were involved in the negotiations are going back to their members to say, we think maybe we should accept it. The civil servants have said that theirs was fair and acceptable. There's a mixed response from the police force as well on there. So clearly all public sector workers have a problem with the amount of money they get paid, because they don't get paid enough. The issues though here are multifaceted. I think it's not just a case of that's not enough money. As Paul touched upon, especially for, obviously I know much more about the teaching side of it, but teachers unions want this to be fully funded, because if it's not fully funded, that pay then has to come out of school budgets, and the budgets are already impossibly managed. There's no money for exercise books or pens or pencils, so there's going to be no money to pay for it. And in some of the wording as well, it was very much like, you can pay up to this, and it's like, well, a lot of schools are not going to be able to afford to if you don't fully fund it. And I noticed in a lot of the wording there was nothing that said fully funded. It didn't even say partially funded, but I think that the hint was that they were going to give some of it, but certainly not all of it. So that's going to be one massive issue. Another one is that a lot of the unions, because this has been going on for years, they've been getting ridiculous pay increases for many years. So a lot of them are looking for restorative pay deals where they'll take 6% now, but next year they'll want 6, and the year after they'll want 7, and until they can build up the amount of money they've lost. Because we've got to remember that these pay increases are tantamount to pay cuts, because they haven't been going up with the rate of inflation.
Absolutely.
Things are more expensive.
Yes.
So I think what's probably going to happen is, I think a lot of the unions will still go out on strike. My worry is that, the attack on trade union rights and, just having any sort of protest at the minute means that we're losing a lot of the tools we've got as trade unionists. But not only that, we need to come out in protest about how the government have said they're going to fund it, because they're not going to raise taxes. They're not going to, and they can sell that to the British public as if, well, we won't raise your taxes for this. But actually, what about the super rich? We've been arguing for a long time. There's more than enough money in this country if you charge them. But instead, what two of the options they've given us is that they're going to raise visa charges. So anybody who uses a visa, you'll get more charges for that. And the other thing, which I just found absolutely deplorable and just explains this government so perfectly, is that they wanted to put extra charges to migrant workers who want to use the NHS. They're going to charge them more money, because that's clearly where all of our money's going. All these bloody migrants coming over. It's honestly, it is just feeding this perpetual narrative that, we're so much better than everybody else, and this government knows what it's doing, and it's being fiscally secure and all of that rubbish. I think, and then you think about what Keir Starmer said when they've asked him about all of this, and he said he's not wading into this debate. It's not his place. And I'm like,
hang on, that's a difference. I'm going to come to that in a moment.
Yeah, sorry.
One thing to ask you before I go to Jane. What worries me about this is that all these strikes work, all these public sector strikes work by damaging the public. They don't harm the government, they harm the public.
Yeah.
And the way they win is because the public realizes the justice of their cause and then says to the government, you get off your arse and help these people. They're absolutely damn right. And sort of the strikes influence the public to influence the government. What strikes me about this 6.5% pay deal, especially if some of the unions come off it and accept that pay deal, then the public will turn against the unions who continue to strike. That is what worries me.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely spot on, John. I think there's definitely a fear of that. But I think in this instance, because all of the sectors that are striking are such essential workers, that I don't think it would take a PR genius to sort of tell the public, these doctors are people who save your life and your family's lives, and they deserve more money. And also really, really hammering that narrative home that this is not just a small pay increase. This is actually a pay cut, what you're offering. And it's not just these people. Everybody deserves to not be starving and not be able to afford their bills. And really just tackling the government on this. And I think people will warm to that.
Thank you. Well, let's hope, because
yeah,
you're right. I mean, people have been asked to take a pay cut now almost every year since 2008, and so you can't go on forever. Jane, have the Tory, I mean, both Laura and Paul alluded to this, have the Tories outflanked Labour on this issue.
Yeah, I mean, Paul mentioned that Labour had said that they wouldn't have matched the 6.5% for the teachers from the pay review advice, and now the Tories have accepted that. So I think this has really highlighted the fact that the Labour Party, as it is now, just don't have a credible economic policy. They're talking about fiscal responsibility. They're telling us it's fiscally responsible to starve children, to have families in poverty, to have public sector workers who can't afford to live. That's not responsible. And then they're bringing out ministers, Yvette Cooper, when challenged on what the missions of the party were, talking about the highest economic growth in the G7, and that economic growth means absolutely nothing to any of us whilst we continue to have rising inequality. None of us are going to benefit from that so-called wealth. It's not going to reach 99% of us. It's just going to keep on filtering to the top. And if Labour keep on watering down the Tories' policies, we need so badly to repair the damage that's been done in the last 14 years. We haven't got any time to carry on down this road, even if it's a little bit slower than we're going now. This is disastrous for society, for our economy, for everything, for the environment. We just can't do that. And this is all they seem to have to offer. They don't really know what they're doing. They come out with these phrases like fiscal responsibility, and they don't seem to care about the human beings at the bottom of the pile who that party is supposed to be representing. But again, and I was a Labour member until very recently, but I noticed that, Zach Polansky and Carla Denyer, Natalie Bennett, and and the Green Party as a whole, very vocally coming out against these things that are then rightly so, publicly criticising the fact not only that the pay rises are below inflation, but they're also not funded and going to lead to further cuts. So I think we need to try to move away from this idea that it is the Tories or Labour, and I know that's all there has been for a long time now, but we need to have some hope, and we need to move with our feet. And if people voted at the general election the way they did at the local elections, bearing in mind also that we've had boundary changes, we can really see some real changes at the next election. And we've got a lot of people stepping out of politics now, a lot of Tory MPs saying that they're not going to stand at the next election. This is really a big opportunity for change. And there's the Breakthrough Party too, who they're tiny, they haven't got a lot of money, but there are people out there trying to do something. If you want to get involved with something new, there are options out there. I think what's with Jamie just got that's shown us we need to just try and work together.
Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you for your comments on that. Really good stuff, people. Some fabulous comments as well in the chat, which we don't have time to go through. Just one, which I'm going to comment on. Mick Hills sort of saying people know now what Labour stands for. I would challenge you on that, Mick. One of the problems is people don't know what Labour stands for, because what they stand for today won't be what they stand for tomorrow. They'll change, be the sort of people who were shadow cabinet ministers making their stand on the two-child policy and how we were going to change this, suddenly having to backtrack because Keir Starmer's decided we're not doing it. That's half of the problem with Labour at the moment. You don't know where you are with them. You cannot support them because the bits that you support, suddenly found they're not doing it anymore. And the fundraiser at the moment, 91,262. Let's move on to the next section of the show. Just gone up since I told you while that little clip was playing. It's now 91,382.
Wow, amazing.
So the second of our three questions today is SAG. Is something to do with my belly? Sort of,
Not at all.
Tell
Nothing
us all
to do with
about this.
age,
Tell us what's been going on.
So, to give its full title, the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of TV and Radio Artists, are on strike. This has been coming for a bit of a while. There's been rumblings about it for a while. Essentially, the actors in America and Hollywood and TV and radio have sort of an agreement with the Alliance of Motion Pictures and TV Producers. None of them have got really short acronyms or anything, so I apologize. But that deal has come to an end, and because they haven't been able to negotiate a new deal, the union felt they couldn't go any further and have gone on strike. The problems are pay and workload and, you know, the usual, the things you hear all the time. It feels strange to be talking about famous actors having to deal with all this stuff, but they do. Working practices, better working conditions, things like that. One of the main things to come out of this, and it is something we have touched upon on the show quite a few times actually, is the introduction of AI and how that is impacting creativity and what we do with our shows, and the need for actors to be in these things. And essentially the fear is, and if you've been keeping up with Black Mirror, there's actually an episode just being released this series where an actress signs away her rights to her AI likeness, and it's spooky how close to life these things are. But that's kind of the worry here as well, in that the producers association have said, you know, they'll say, no, we won't use your likeness without your consent, but they haven't agreed to do that for background artists. So you know, supporting artists or extras as they used to be called, people working in the background, people with bit parts. It would be okay for you to then film them once and then use their likeness as many times as you want, and you won't have to pay them, which is obviously ludicrous, but very easy to do with our current technology. So that's another thing that they're fighting against.
So they get 1 day's pay.
Yes.
And then you never need to employ them again, but you never need to employ other people. You can use that as an extra here, there, and bloody everywhere for everything. And
that goes for your face and your voice.
Puts everybody out of work, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Essentially, that's it. They don't need it's a cost saving thing, isn't it, for studios? And it's not trying to do something in a better way, more efficient way. It's to save them money. And you know, these studios are raking in the money. Also, the other thing is something called residuals. Now, previously, it used to be if a program that you starred in was on the telly again, so if they rerun it, you would get a residual payment for that. The problem is, with things like Netflix and Paramount and Apple and Amazon Prime and all of those, the whole nature of residual payments has completely changed, because I mean, they're still playing Friends now, 12 years later, but their payments are not in line with that. So there is it doesn't cover the streaming service that we have now, which is predominantly where people watch their television and movies. So they're trying to negotiate that at the minute. Obviously, the Alliance of Motion Pictures and TV Producers have said, well, what a shame that SAG have walked away from the negotiating table. That hasn't been the case. We always know employers tend to try and push that narrative on people, but that's not the case. They tried to negotiate. They weren't willing to say it was okay to own somebody's likeness and use it as you will, and not renegotiate the residual payments as well. So that's why they've gone on strike. That's why you'll see a lot of people leaving. You saw a lot of people last week leaving film premieres, like the Oppenheimer premiere. You know, there was loads of people had left that. Thousands and thousands of people. It is going to cause an issue in terms of TV shows and films that are currently in production. They won't be able to continue for a good long while until this is sorted. And the other potential impact, which actually, weirdly enough, might end up impacting me, is that Equity, which is the actors union in the UK, which I'm also part of, are showing major solidarity, and rightly so. But there is some talk and speculation that these productions will move production to the UK. And if they do that, then we all need to go on strike as well. So it's all a bit up in the air, and it might affect us. And it's bonkers. talking
Thanks.
big
I'm so
money.
sorry to stop you talking, Laura, because I mean it's really interesting. Is this stuff and sort of in as much as it affects TV and streaming, it affects all our lives.
Exactly.
And it's in all our interests that it's sorted out well. But I need to move on. Can somebody somewhere post the link to the Fran Dreschner speech that she gave, which is absolutely thrilling? And as a result of that, people, what I did is I said to Jane, sort of, your question will be, why should Fran Drescher be our hero? But actually, sometimes you got to be careful with this kind of thing. So I'm going to rephrase my question. It isn't why should Fran Drescher be our hero? It's going to be, Jane, should Fran Drescher be our hero?
I think we should all be very impressed with her coming out on this issue. I think she's given people a lot of motivation with what she said, and she's speaking a lot of common sense. So about I was reading that 87% of the members of these unions don't actually make the $26,000 a year that they need to qualify for health insurance to have any sort of health service. So I'm not sure what the exchange rate is at the moment, but I wouldn't have thought that's a lot more than minimum wage in this country. So 87% of the members of those unions aren't making minimum wage in this country. And so she's saying that the employers are crying out that they're in poverty and there's not enough money, but they're paying hundreds of millions of dollars over to their CEOs, and that they're not appreciating the contribution by all of the writers and actors and artists who've contributed to that. They're thinking they can rip them off, take their work, and just cream off the profits for a few at the top of it all. And she said, when employers make Wall Street and greed their priority and forget about the essential contributions of essential contributors who make the machine run, we have a problem. And that's kind of a metaphor for our whole capitalist society. So it was a fantastic speech. And I think on this issue, she's been really strong. I don't know much about Fran Drescher. So hero is a really strong word, I think, to use for someone when you want to know what their stance on one particular issue. But her speech is really worth watching on this, and I really hope they're successful.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of when you read if you go away and read Wikipedia, people, because I mean, she's overcome such things as that woman, and just a fabulous. But she did take part in a function for the IDF quite clearly, and also she spoke out very strongly against the vaccine in certain respects during COVID. So the sort of, well, sometimes we all make mistakes, don't we? So thank you very much, Jane. Finally, Paul, AI is going to do us all out of a job shortly. Just very briefly, I mean, is this a worry? And what can we do to stop it? Because we can't all go and move into super paid AI developing jobs, and AI is going to take away so many ordinary jobs. What do? Do we all just starve to death? What's going to have to happen?
AI isn't going to clean the place. It isn't going to do any of the actual jobs that need doing. Humans are going to have to do that. And it's a very strange one. One of the things that AI is going to be incredibly good at, funnily enough, is going to be coding things into law. So all the things that high-powered lawyers do currently can be replaced by AI very easily. Apparently they've worked out that that's one of the things that's very replaceable. But things like someone like a teacher is not very replaceable by AI. Even with what Laura was talking about with the scripts and stuff, what they're doing is one of the things they're talking about is getting AI to write scripts, but they still need people to come in and polish the script. So what they'll do is they'll like go through a load of like cop shows or something like that if it's a cop show, and then they'll come up with a generic script, but then they'll have to pay people to polish it and make it good and make it funny and make it interesting, because AI can't do that. But all they're using it for is to make sure the fee's lower, because it's a lesser fee than writing a script. Yes. So this is like, it's not AI. AI isn't necessarily the issue here. It's how it's been used by humans. Remember, humans have made AI. You tell AI some principles to live by and to think by, then, you know, it's going to follow those things. And if the wrong people are programming it for the wrong reasons, then AI is going to be problematic. But it's not going to do the things that a lot of people think it's going to do, like, you know, get rid of jobs like teachers and stuff. And it's certainly not going to clean our floors. It's basically going to mean that those jobs that people need to do, which are incredibly important, which is maintenance and tidying and all those things that we do on a daily basis, all those unpaid jobs and things, it's not going to make our lives easier. It seems to be being used as a way to make rich people richer. So yeah, it's like everything that happens seems to be a way to accelerate the increased wealth of the wealthiest. That's where the problems lie.
God, that's a brilliant point, Paul. Thank you so much. Last question. We have 13 minutes, team. Sort of, and most of it's going to be taken up by Jane, because I know that she's very agitated about this. Jane, talk to us about ticket offices, sort of what's been happening, and why are you so angry about it?
So there's a proposal at the moment to close down most of the ticket offices in this country on our railways. So this makes me really frustrated, as I don't drive. I've spent a lot of years commuting. I've spent a significant portion of my life and any of the money that I've ever been paid for working on train tickets. A huge amount of both those things have gone to trains. And over that time, I've seen them scale back and scale back every year. You know, a new timetable comes out. They've shaved a few more early trains off the timetable. There's a little bit less. They've never given a little bit more. The prices are hiked up ridiculously every year, but they're always cutting back. And I've seen them cut back on staff in the past, and I've experienced how unpleasant that is for the passengers. And I've seen how unpleasant that looks to me to be for the staff as well. You know, just making staff stand on gates at stations, you know, aggressively accusing passengers of not having bought tickets. That's not nice for the staff, having to stand in the freezing cold all day. You know, they're suggesting that there's insinuations that this isn't about letting staff go, but Mick Lynch has said that he's already seen documentation notifying of a quarter of the ticket staff in the country being let go. And of course, that's what this is about. And how can it possibly be a cost-saving exercise if they're not going to, you know, get rid of staff? So I think from a passenger point of view, I'm just so angry that the train companies and the government plays a big part in this, because it does sound like throughout the negotiations that have been going on over the last year, the train companies themselves were prepared to make concessions that the government did not allow them to do. So this is very much ideologically driven by our government as well. But just seeing these companies take huge amount of profits out of people's pockets, and a lot of the time funneled then out of the country, and a lot of the time funneled into nationalised rail services in other countries, because we're the only country stupid enough to have such a ridiculous system that robs its people blind for inefficient, dirty, poor transport, so that some people can make a lot of profit out of it on the other side of it. But then you've got the practicalities of it, because ticket machines can't do a lot of things that the people at the ticket offices can do. A huge amount of things they can't do. They can't do the refunds. They can't do season tickets longer than a month. They don't do the group save discount, which I see advertised everywhere around the railways up in Oxfordshire and Berkshire. They don't do the disabled persons discount. They don't do the advanced fares. They don't do off-peak tickets before 9:30. So if you're travelling before 9:30 on a weekday, that's bad luck. You're going to pay 4 times as much for your ticket because you've only got a ticket machine. They don't do the seat reservations, and often you'll get on the trains and find that there are no seats except for the ones that have been reserved. So that's quite important. They don't do photo cards. They don't explain restrictions on fares, which can lead to people getting into serious difficulty and getting fines. They don't automatically offer the cheapest tickets, and in fact, they're not even obligated to offer all of the ticket choices. So this will definitely cost passengers even more money than we're already paying for this overpriced service. And
Those
then
bastard ticket office of managers finding the cheapest tickets for people. Get
helping
right, it deserves
passengers.
sacking. For goodness sake, philanthropy in the ticket offices. We can't be doing with that in modern Britain. I'm sorry, Jane. There's also one hell of a row about the consultation process itself, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, So there's a legal challenge by Andy Burnham and I think 4 other Labour mayors, because according to the guidance, they've closing ticket offices, and especially on this scale, but on any scale, should be done under a 12-week consultation basis. There should be a lot to this process, but they're rushing through a 21-day process, which closes on the 26th of July. So there's only a week left to respond to it. And a lot of groups representing disabled people are really upset about this, because it's already a horrible experience, I would say, catching the train in this country. From experience, it's not a nice experience, and that's not because of the lovely staff, that's because of the appalling service that we're getting from these companies who are constantly scaling back our service for more and more money. But if you're disabled, you're significantly less likely to use those services, because it's a really terrible experience. You have to call ahead. I think it might be 48 hours if you even want to travel on a train in a wheelchair. That's how behind the times we are in this country, that we can't cope with someone in a wheelchair as it is catching a train, and with ticket offices open. This would just be horrendous. A disabled person, a blind person, for example, is not going to be able to use a ticket machine. This is just it's a really awful discriminative policy, and that a lot of the machines don't take cash as well. So you've got people on lower incomes or older people, or just anyone who doesn't have access to a computer and lots of money on a card they can use. This really disadvantages them, and I think from a passenger and a staff safety point of view as well, because staff are already subject to violence. It's reasonably frequent that staff are subjected to violence. If they haven't got a safe place to be working in, if they're just having to walk on the stations, I would think that's even going to make things worse for them. And as a passenger, there's times when I've felt unsafe, and I've been really grateful there've been staff there, and there's times I've felt unsafe and I have wished to God there had been staff there when there weren't. So this just shouldn't be allowed to happen.
Thank you, and thank you for how hard it was to stop you talking about this.
Sorry.
And no, we need this. If you've been listening to that, you now have a million things to say. Now you've got to, it's a right fact is the consultation. You've got to work out which station is going to be closed, which affects you. Then you've got to find out which company runs that station. And then you've got to go on. You can't write, I think you can write by post. But it's got to be done online. There's sort of, it's a right faff making your point. But please write and complain, because as Jane said, the consultation is a sham, and it needs swamping with complaints. Paul, I'm always amazed that if I were to stop paying my mortgage because it was getting a bit expensive for me, that contract would be enforced. I'd either lose my house or I'll be made to pay. They'd take me to court to pay. I'm always amazed that these big companies, when they have a government contract to say run our rail service, they seem, or the bus service, they seem to be able to, or clad buildings safely. They seem to be just able to break the terms of that contract, and they are never held to account. Why isn't the government just saying, sorry, we gave you a contract to run those ticket offices. I couldn't give a shit whether it's making a loss or not. You made that contract, get on and run it until the end of the contract, or pay penalties for failing to do so. Why? Do we let these people get away with this? And if that's the case, what chance have we got of getting the rail companies to reverse their decision?
Well, the answer to your question is because it's a racket. It's just a way of them making money, and that's the way it's set up, and the government are quite aware that it's a racket. This is why, the spending, like the amount of public money that goes into the rail companies is way higher than when it was nationalised. So it actually costs the public a lot more now than it would have done if it wasn't privatised, and you would have had to have paid less. So we're getting charged twice for this. We're getting charged through our through public funding, and we're getting charged through the ticket prices that we pay. It's like all the other things that we see that have been privatised, like water or Royal Mail or any of these things. It's just a racket. It's a way of making their friends make some money. So until we remove these practices and until we educate people about exactly what's going on, because I often wonder why people aren't furious about these things like we are, because we're furious that we're being stitched up, and they just don't seem to be furious in the same way. So I can only think that they just don't know, because I don't think people don't care. I think they just don't get their heads around the idea that it's actually more expensive to the public. It's like the USA has got some of the highest healthcare spending in the world, but also people go bankrupt and lose their lives because of medical bills and so on in America. It's a racket. It's always been a racket. Like, that's what privatization is. It's a big
Thank
old
you,
racket
Paul.
if you need it.
I'm going to stop you there with that, and you're spot on, right? As well, it bloody well is. Finally, Laura, we failed to get people back onto the trains after the pandemic. This is going to make it worse. I mean, how do we get people out of the car onto public transport?
I mean, it's an easy answer, isn't it? The only way to get that to happen is better investment, better infrastructure, better access to public transport, buses, trains, what have you. Our infrastructure for transport is just dwindling. It is horrendous. It serves London. That's pretty much all we do, serve London. Even the little villages around here, we can't get anywhere. You've got to have a car. So we have some of the best manufacturers in the world here. We have workers who have worked in all number of places, steelworks, down the pits, wherever. We could be world leaders if we wanted to be in new transport, green transport. We could be working on that. We could do all sorts, but no, unless, as Paul says, it gives money to the racket, then it's not worth it, is it? But we could be giving people jobs. We could be, world leaders. We could have an amazing transport network that links everybody up. It could be something special, and the choice is being made that that's just not worth it.
Thank you so much. Wouldn't it be great, people, if we had a party that was a democratic socialist party that begin to move towards that kind of thing? And with that, I'm going to bring the show to an end. I'm going to hand over to Paul in a little while, but because I'm the chair, I just get the right to say a number of things. Thank you so much for watching us, people. It has been, oh, by the way, just two little things before I start saying all these rubbish. First of all, a lot of people pointing out the problems to do with the consultation on the chat, absolutely right, but also people telling you how you can do it. The RMT has a lovely pro forma that you can use. The second thing is that while we've been talking, these donations are coming in. At the moment, it's 91,527, which is just so exciting. But to go back to what I was saying, thank you so much for watching us. It's so important that we keep the flame alive. And replying to Paul's question of why aren't people angry? Jacqueline Hemming suggests they're just furied out. And I think we're all a bit tired. So you've got 6 weeks, people, now to get those fires stoked. Go away, just tend the fire, let it grow back brightly, and then we'll meet together and we'll all be furious together in September. I think that's the way to do this. So thank you so much for watching us. It's such a privilege to be able to talk to you. It's such a privilege for me to sit here and ask questions to wonderful guests. And the people we've had today are just 3 of the finest, aren't they? I just have to thank you so much for your comments. Jane, for the wonderful fury that you have within your soul about so many things, that righteousness, the indignation you possess, which just thrills me to listen to you. and sort of Laura, for your knowledge about the things you talk about, and for your down to earth common senseness. And Paul, for just your ability to strip the veneer off the system and say, look at the crap underneath. It's absolutely wonderful. God bless the three of you. God bless you for listening. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say goodbye from us for 6 weeks. And I'm going to hand over to Paul to put the thing to bed. God bless you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for all your comments, and thank you to you, John, because you've been absolutely amazing as always. I think maybe keeping the flame alive might be really easy, given it's going to be a tinderbox, with the heat wave and everything. So yeah, let's get that flame raging, but not in a physical sense. So I think we do all need a break, but we need to come back and be honest and stop being scared, because I think what's happened is many of us have been connected with the Labour Party and have been scared to speak our minds. Not everyone within the Labour Party, but there's been too much looking over our shoulders, like, oh, is Keir Starmer going to get out of this? It doesn't matter. You are not going to do anything within the Labour Party. You are not going to get a choice. The choice between one right-wing ghoul and another is not going to change a single thing. It's just going to... and if you thought it was ever going to be anything real, just think about Kin McGuinness and the thing that about a slur about gypsies that came out that didn't get through the due diligence. That didn't get picked up. But, my mild criticism of Keir Starmer did. It's not the same. We are not even playing the same game as those people. We don't even know what the rules are. They own the board. And, so don't play their game. Don't do what they do. Go and do something else and enjoy it and have a little bit of joy in your heart, because that's what we're going to need. We're going to need to stick up for each other, enjoy our lives, and do something positive together, because that is when we're strongest. So join Socialist Think Tank. Watch all the things. We've got interviews with Jamie Driscoll. If you like Jamie Driscoll, go and find out what he was doing as North of the Tyne Mayor like a couple of years ago, and what a great job he's done there, and what a nice man he is. If you like Jeremy Corbyn, go and see our stuff that we've done with him. In fact, there's a running Mish Rahman. There's a running theme here, isn't there? If you appear on Socialist Think Tank, you get blocked.
Anna Rotherby as well. Ian Lavery, they're coming for you.
Oh yeah, Ian Lavery, yeah. So he could be in trouble, and John Trickett as well. They're all right, aren't they? But there are still some good people around. I don't know what they hope to achieve in the Labour Party, but let's achieve something good together. It doesn't need to be within politics in that way. And Laura Smith said something really good. If we can raise that amount of money in such a quick time for Jamie Driscoll, then why can't we do that for workers who are on strike, and support each other in those ways? And it's a very interesting point that she makes. It's another absolute diamond out there. So we'll see you all soon. Thanks for all the support. Thanks for all the comments. And we'll see you in, I'm sure we'll do a couple of shows over the summer. But if we don't, see you in 6 weeks, and take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Keep the red flag flying here.